Okay,
Yeah,
first,
I think Lisa has something to do with Larkin.
okay. Well, let's welcome everyone to the uh, North Texas E Club Rotary meeting for September 25th. We want to thank Shelley for being here. And just so you know, Shelley, don't go by how many people are here because we do video it and people
Absolutely.
will watch the video. So that's where
That's
we get more views. Uh, I'm going to ask, since we're not doing our invocation today, I'm going to let David do the pledge.
Okay, if you'll join me in the pledge,
Okay.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of
of
the
the
United
United
States
States
of
of
America
America,
America
and
and
to
and
the
to
to
the
the
republic
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 for
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 which
which
it
which
it
it
stands,
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 one
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 nation,
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 under
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 God,
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 indivisible,
indivisible,
with
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 liberty
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 and
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 justice
justice
justice.
for
for
all.
all. Well, since it's just the three of us, I guess we'll decide to go to Lisa. I mean,
There's four of us.
well,
Linda
Shelley's not a
Linda
member.
counts.
Well, no, I'm
I'm,
on
I'm,
here twice.
One
okay.
of
Go
those is
ahead.
me because
I know.
I'm using your
I
computer.
know. We've already discussed that. Okay, go
Did
ahead,
that.
Howard.
So I'm guessing we'll just agree to go to Lisa for the Halloween on, I think it was the 30th. What was it? What was that
Let's do
Tuesday?
the 30th, not the 23rd or whatever.
Let me
Let's do
find
that
out.
last
Let me
Saturday.
get not
Actually,
on a Saturday. I was gonna do it on the last on that Tuesday, the
let's not do
30th.
it on a Tuesday.
Well,
Let's see if she's available. I'm not going to be in town on the 23rd.
no, the 30th.
The 30th?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Tuesday the 30th. That way, it's the same time everyone's expecting. We're not taking away a weekend. So I'm gonna make,
Okay.
and I'll tell Lisa that's what everyone decided on. So, I
Okay.
was asked to throw it open, and this is where we are. So that's what we'll do. Okay. So that solves
Okay.
that problem, and then I'll let Lisa tell us what she wants us to donate for the food.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Charlotte. Can you
Oh,
hear
hi,
us?
Charlotte.
I don't know if she can hear us, if her mic is mic. Well, we just decided, Charlotte, was to have our social at Lisa's on the 30th. We opened it up to the possibility of going to a restaurant. Only Rick said that was something he thought we should do. And I asked the entire group if anyone had a restaurant they prefer or if they prefer Lisa. And since I haven't heard back, and three of us said Lisa, we'll go with Lisa on the 30th. So that's where our social will be. So that solves that problem. We want to make sure everyone's put their dues in and hopefully paid their Paul Harris donation for the year as well. That would be a good thing to do. And let's try to invite some friends to come to the meetings as well. I can't think of anything else we need to discuss unless Linda has something that I'm leaving out.
I don't think so. I'm leaving Thursday and I'll be gone until the 24th of October.
Oh,
And we'll be
okay.
visiting Rotary clubs along the way.
Okay, excellent. Let me think. Then I guess we'll get to Shelley then. Shelley is going to be our speaker. She's going to tell stories about Dallas. And Shelley, when you're speaking, I'm going to mute my mic. Now, if I get up for minutes, because I have to take my dog out, sometimes he comes in. I'll be back. I won't be gone long.
No worries.
Just letting you know I'm not leaving. But when he says he needs to go, that means he needs to
Yeah,
go.
it's for the best of us.
I don't debate with him.
Yeah.
Okay, Shelley, we're looking forward to your presentation. Please begin.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak to you. It is quite a treat for me as well. Wesley Rankin Community Center exists in West Dallas. We've been on the exact same corner for the last 80 years. We've been about 116 years in existence. And so at this point, we're just a part of the neighborhood. We have always been education focused as well and also multi-generational. So we have programs for kids, adults, and senior citizens. And I think that sets us apart from maybe some of the other agencies here. You might know that West Dallas is changing. A lot of people know us for Trinity Groves right now, where back in the day, I believe when they were building the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, it was deemed the bridge to nowhere. And so since then, a lot of people have a reason to come across the bridge, and it's put us on the map. I thought I would just, for my presentation, kind of walk you through some key things that have happened to West Dallas, and kind of, it will help you reframe kind of who we are and what we do, excuse me. So, like in the 1920s in West Dallas, there was no sewage, there was no paved roads, no running water. There weren't even really places for people to work over here. And so being kind of an immigrant area of town, because it definitely had the more affordable housing, a lot of our, clientele really resorted to crime because that's ultimately how they could make a living. And so we are most known for Bonnie and Clyde and their stomping grounds. But it wasn't just an isolated occupation for them. There really was a lot of crime around here, and people called it the devil's back door. From my understanding, police didn't even prefer to patrol over here just because of the crime that existed. But, like a lot of people know us by Bonnie and Clyde, but I have to say that there is so much potential and promise here that it would be a shame to paint the entire neighborhood in the 1920s and 30s with just their story. Some little interesting facts about Bonnie and Clyde is Bonnie was 19 and Clyde was 20 when they met. Bonnie was married to an imprisoned criminal, and Clyde was not married at all. And they both truly loved music. And so we never really hear about kind of the backstory of who they were, but that's honestly the truth. They both adored music. In fact, even when they were finally gunned down, they found a saxophone in the back of their car, and they believed it to be Clyde Barrow's. And Bonnie wrote poetry. A lot of it was about Clyde and their relationship. Their criminal spree lasted about 4 years, and they're believed to have killed, and these are the numbers, 13 people, robbed 15 banks, and many more small stores and gas stations. And a little known fact, Clyde always preferred to drive a Ford. In fact, he even wrote a letter to Mr. Ford that you can Google and find about how he had the finest cars to sell. So they did kind of have an artsy side. And I have to tell you, when working with children here, they are just as artsy as they were back in the 1920s and 30s. Lots of art and music focused students at our community center. Got one more picture that just kind of shows their love of each other as well. And on to the 19th, let's see, back over here. I'm not the most tech savvy, so y'all bear with me.
Not a problem.
I know. It really isn't my forte. This is my first time using Zoom too, so thanks for teaching me. The 1930s also brought this battery plant, and this was one of the few places that people in the area could work. Again, they were resorting to crime, and this is one of the areas in which families could make a living that wasn't crime. And so it was called RSR. And although this brought what they thought was going to be better living conditions for families, it actually was leaking lead into the ground. And so you see what also was a problem was the fact that literally, and we find this even today, the battery plant was literally 50 feet from where housing was. And so for families who didn't have air conditioning, they rolled up their windows and breathed in actually harmful vapors. And so students were actually born with disabilities, and kids had huge, percentages of lead in their body, and they didn't even know what was happening. In fact, even back in the day, that families, when they needed to level out their land, because it can be kind of hilly around here in spots, they would go to this area of town where a lot of dirt was, and they would carry the dirt back home with them to level out their land. And so, we were planting seeds and growing things in that, and children are playing in it as well. And so what we thought was going to be something promising and then would really bring life to the place of West Dallas and give them a sense of living, it actually was doing the opposite. What is crazy for me is that, even though the people addressed this with the city overlooked this problem. So you can see my dates at the top of the slide say 1930 to 1984. This lead battery plant was in existence for that amount of time before it was closed and addressed. And in fact, again, this is mind-blowing to me. It wasn't until it ended up on kind of the national priority list of Bill Clinton's era that it was actually shut down. So on a city level, it wasn't addressed at all. And then it had to be addressed on a national level for them to close down the plant. I can tell you even today, like we acquired some property across the street from us, from a resident. We have to get that tested for lead. So all the development that you see going up in West Dallas, we have to go through a procedure to make sure that there's not lead on the ground still today, because there are definitely signs of it all over town just from people moving it and using the dirt and not really understanding how truly harmful it was. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit to some more recent stories. In 2016, we coined this phrase, the housing crisis. I'm not sure what the city would call it, but in West Dallas and at Wesley Rankin, we call this our housing crisis. This was fairly recent. You might remember reading about it in the newspaper. And really it was created because the city council created new code compliance rules for rent houses. That's honestly the truth. So for a lot of people living around in this neighborhood, they have been living in houses that they still didn't have plumbing. You know, they still have uninsulated walls. They still have electricity boxes in their bedrooms and things like that. And so when the city changed the code compliance rules, specifically for rent housing and living conditions, there was about 200 houses in West Dallas and 100 in South Dallas that were caught in the mix. And they all belonged in a portfolio known as the owner HMK, Kresh. And he supposedly bought this portfolio back in the 80s. It's my understanding he didn't do a whole lot with the houses. So if they were damaged, it was up to the renters to improve them. And also to say he also never raised their rent, which seems super fair. I mean, they were renting for like $400, I would say. There are families of 6 and 8 living in these houses. But what he didn't do when he didn't raise the rent is raise up their affordability of the price of inflation for rental homes. So pretty much what we had was we had a true housing crisis in the fact that 200 of our families were living in houses that were asked to be brought up to code. And then we had a landlord saying that it would cost him millions of dollars to bring 300 houses up to code. And so instead of ensuing the fees, he would just tear them down. And so that created just kind of a scare in the neighborhood. You know, like, what are these people going to do now that 200 of them do not have homes? And for a lot of these families, this is the only place they've ever lived. As a kid, I grew up in Mississippi, and I can probably count 4 different houses I lived in as a kid before I moved to Dallas. And I have to say that's very different than the culture in West Dallas. I've been here about 8.5 years, and there is a tie of identity to land. We have grandparents here who have lived in the exact same house for 80-something years. We have, you know, children and adults who have lived in the same house that they were born in. It is like it's more identity related than something I've been familiar with. And so, as you can imagine, like this on many different levels, taking away someone's house, it's more than just I'll go find another place to live. It is all they have ever known. In addition, I think it's important to say that for a lot of these families, it had a lot of like effect of family and students, because there is also an infrastructure that I think a lot of people do not understand of this neighborhood. And it's the old way of like, if you don't have a cup of sugar, I'm going to go to my neighbors and I'm going to loan that cup of sugar. That's exactly what happens here. It's kind of a village mentality. What I don't have, my neighbor can have it. Probably has it, and we can share something to make some kind of pact. And so that happens all over the neighborhood. So my best example of that is the Cruz family that used to live across the street from us. I've pulled up a picture of a bulldozer, and they were two houses down from this house. And so what happened was that we had this family, the Cruz family. They have 4 children. The oldest was 24. The youngest Angel was in first grade. The 2 were in middle school in between. And so their family life was that the mom would clean houses. The daughter was walking to El Centro West because they did not have transportation. So she'd walk about 1.5 miles to El Centro and then 1.5 miles home to get her education. And then when she got home, she would babysit to help contribute to the family finances. The children would ride our transportation buses and come to Wesley Rankin. And then when they were done from school, they would walk across the street back home. So the mom cleaned houses in the neighborhood so she didn't have to leave. We've got the daughter who's doing the babysitting. We've got the neighbor with the car. So if they needed to access something, they could, utilize the car and that system as well. And so the neighbors were getting their babysitting from Paula, the oldest. And so you've got kind of the sharing, again, this infrastructure that was really broken up when people had to consider moving a house. That for this family meant that they would be farther away from a grocery store, farther away from their school, farther away from a center that provided transportation and after-school care and dinner, and possibly affecting their employment with the houses that she cleaned. And so there was all of this that kind of went unlooked during this this housing mess. There were a lot of, if I'm being completely honest, there were a bunch of neighborhood meetings that happened that seemed helpful, but we attended them too, and they were really just more abusive of the people. They had other alternative means. They were not there to help people who genuinely needed housing. Either the city was looking for witnesses for a lawsuit against HMK, or HMK was showing up in the middle of a meeting using it for media purposes. And so there was no one really talking about the people on the ground. This picture with the bulldozer is across the street from us. We exist on the corner of Crossman and Toronto. And so this is diagonal from us. So when HMK started tearing down houses because of fees, the people were asked to move, and then these bulldozers would come in. And the timing of this bulldozer could not have been any worse because our after school was letting out that day, and that's how we took the picture. And so imagine a community center across the street in which children and parents were picking up kids, and we're all sitting on the grass area almost like a baseball game watching this happen to a house. What would come later would be the next 2 houses next to it. So this is now a huge green space across the street from us that's been cleared. And just to show you like how much socio-emotion was going on, the development of kids and what they were perceiving, we had this little kid named Natalie ask her mom on that lawn if her house was going to be killed too. And they're not part of the HMK rental house connection system. They're actually, in a different rental house. And so for a kid who's like second grade looking at this, that creates some kind of, you got to have some support for kids in that. You just do, because what they're perceiving is fear and being really scared. And I have to say, the parents were the exact same way. It's a lot of scariness. And even as a nonprofit, and my going around trying to meet with people to try to get some truth behind what would happen to these families and how we could help them, the water was just very murky. It was hard to get any clarity on, how much time these people had. If you go back and look at the newspapers, I'm sure it tracks it really well, because I feel like this happened in the summer and they continue to inch back the date that families had to move out of these houses. Judge hearing after judge hearing was happening to give them more time. They wanted to stay by Christmas to be with their families. They wanted to stay by the end of the school year, and that was granted too. So it was like it was almost like false hope. You ended up with a lot of uncertainty, and then you would think it'd be your last day and you don't have a plan, and that's crazy scary. And then you realize you've got another 3 months. And so this is literally how it rolled out for families on the ground. And there are no rental houses, as we all know, in the $400 to $500 range. Not at all. Even if I go back to this picture prior, these two houses, the blue house and the little yellow house, they've been torn down since. And then you see the mattresses on the curb. This was happening a lot too, because for a lot of families, they would just move out quickly to try to go find a place, but they couldn't take their belongings or afford to take their belongings. And so HMK trucks were just going around picking up people's belongings before they would tear down houses. And so I took this picture with my phone of the mattresses, because this is exactly what it would look when we would drive into work. Would be a bunch of people's belongings and couches and mattresses stacked up for bulk pickup. And you can see the Austin apartments across from us, and those were being built too. And quite honestly, it was a little bit of a heartbreak when people would ask if they could just move in those apartments, because those apartments, a studio started at $1,200, I believe. And so we knew that's just how development goes. And so that's what we call our housing crisis, because it just kind of busted up the infrastructure, and a lot of families had to resort to other means. The number one question is, where did they go, and are your kids still there? And yes, our kids are still here, but some of them are driving from Deep Oak Cliff. The schools decided during this housing crisis that despite where they lived, if they were in an HMK house, they could continue to go to school. So we still have kids who are in Oak Cliff, Deeper Irving, maybe even East Dallas at this point, coming over and still attending school here, because that was the one thing that remained consistent for them. And so we still have kids who ride our transportation, and families still pick them up at 6. For some families, we've heard that they've had to utilize college education money that they've saved for their kids to pay for greater rent. So we know that's not going to end well for kids and their future of education. For other families, your kids might have moved out of the house and they have kids of their own and they're making paychecks. So now we're bringing them all into the house, and we're family. Now our count is 13 people under one roof trying to make a rent of $1,000. So that's honestly how people have kind of worked through what had happened in this neighborhood. Since then, also, HMK has offered for families to buy their houses for $60,000. As someone on the ground here, I feel a little bit like this is a ticking time bomb, because those houses still aren't up to code, and families still can't afford to get them up to code. And so, I see the trucks driving by just like everyone else. And so I feel like until we can figure out how these families can get resources and outside help to get them up for code, they really don't own these houses. I also have heard that there's a little gray area in the contract that says HMK really still owns the titles, and they don't technically own the houses. So that, again, it's still murky in things like this. There's no clarity. I'm not going to paint just this bleak hope for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do in all of this. This is Natalie pictured. Natalie is the little girl who asked if her house was going to be killed. If you drive a little bit further past the bridge, past Trinity Groves, you're going to find that our landscape is very diverse. Like that picture that showed apartments, you've got apartments on one side of the street, and you've got these little houses from the 30s are still on the right as well. There are houses still without plumbing, where we serve. There still are parents who can't get great jobs, and they're working 3 jobs for $7 an hour. All of that still exists in this neighborhood. I feel like with the development, it just makes it a little more of a contrast, right? Like you can see the difference now, where before it was a little bit harder because you knew there was just one area of town and you cross the bridge and you can kind of forget about it. It's a little bit harder to do that now when literally your eyes can see both sides of the street. So our landscape is diverse. Our race and economic background is diverse as well. We have African American, white, Hispanic, Guatemalan, Mexican, Ethiopian, Native American. We are a melting pot of races right now. And again, the economic divide is even greater. Also worthy to mention is that our schools are in transition. When I started working here 8.5 years ago, we had 8 elementary schools in the area. We currently have 5. And last year we lost our only middle school. They have actually closed Edison Middle School and rolled the kids into Pinkston High School. And so what has happened there is that our elementary schools, our 5 elementary schools, will go up to 6th grade this year. And then 7th and 8th grade is currently at Pinkston High School. The hope on the other end of that is that there was a ribbon cutting 2 weeks ago saying that a STEM school would be built in West Dallas. And the STEM school is partnered with the Bud Center at SMU, Toyota, and also Dallas ISD. I believe the doors are set to open around 2021. And maybe that's the end of the planning phase. I need to go back and look at that. But it is in the works, and it will go from pre-K to 8th grade, and will hopefully provide hands-on learning for some of our kids in the area. And we also hear that there will be support services as well, something we've been begging for years. So I will say, I put questions of hope and value because I think that's ultimately what this comes down to. We had a mom the other day say, that she doesn't want to leave West Dallas. She wants to stay here, and she's just hoping that her value is more than money. And so I think that's ultimately what the mindset is on the side of the street that we serve, is that we can't just be all about money and wanting really, shiny new things. There's a way that we can coexist, and development can be really, really good for everyone. We just have to make sure that everyone knows the people at the table. And make sure that our neighbors are known. We have one grocery store in the entire neighborhood, and it's called Jerry's. And so we don't even have, competitive prices for fresh fruits and veggies over here. Development can be really, really good. We just have to speak in ways that distinguish the fear, because there's a lot of fear over here, and also just form friendships with people on each side of the street. That's kind of our role in what we do. This is just a snapshot of Wesley Rankin. I told you we're multi-generational. We have girls groups, guys groups. We have a leadership council of women. They're the ones at the bottom, and they actually choose classes that they're going to take. And they're now the primary education. They're teaching classes at Lorenzo de Zavala Elementary and also Sidney Lanier Vanguard. They are primary parent education pieces of these schools. And these women are the ones running the courses. We have a summer camp for kids that is STEM camp. It brings in the Perot truck, and they do dissections with kids as early as 1st grade. We also have a girls group, Girls of Hope, Girls of Honor, bridging inequity between women and men in the neighborhood, because for a lot of women, they don't aspire to be the doctors and the lawyers. They kind of do with whatever their family has kind of placed in their hands prior as far as occupations. We have after school, about 115 kids come here. 80% rely on our transportation. I would say that overall we serve latchkey kid working parents. Our kids would be the ones going home to empty homes. They rely heavily on transportation from school to here. And our parents, like I said, they work 2 to 3 jobs. They are incredibly grateful that by the time they get their students at 6 o'clock at night, they are fed. Their homework's done, and they've done some kind of interest in club to kind of debrief and self-regulate. And so that's kind of our kids section. Senior citizens, we can't leave out our senior citizens. They are really the party group of our center. They do everything from karaoke to DJs and dances. They love celebrating holidays. They just celebrated Mexican Independence Day. They have Dia de los Muertos coming up soon. They just love to live is the best I can say. Some of them do take educational classes, but for the most part, they want to travel to the Arboretum. They want to go to the DMA, the Latino Cultural Center. They want to get out, and they need the social connection because for most of them, they live alone. So that's just kind of a quick snapshot of what we do. A lot of people ask, kind of what if you had to spell it out a little bit clearer, I would say that we bridge gaps of inequity. That's really what we do. So when our senior citizens do not have access to fresh fruits and veggies, we pick it up from the North Texas Food Bank and we bring it here and we send it home with them. When our kids cannot afford musical instruments and go make pottery and, paint plates and do all these kind of different media, art-focused education, we bring that to them. And so we have Crystal, who's literally a second grader, who is obsessed with the trumpet because she played it one year in our summer camp. So we have a guy from Plano. He drives once a week to come here, and he's donated the trumpet, and he's giving her lessons. And that's a common story for kids at the community center. And so it's interesting to know that, Clyde Barrow once was obsessed with the saxophone. Our kids are still incredibly musical, and we try to give them that access despite monetary value. I put access to mental health. We partner with Pastoral Counseling Center, PCC. It brings 3 counselors right now to the community center to help kids cope with things like the housing crisis. That's actually when our partnership began, because our kids just didn't know how to handle that, and we didn't feel like we were skilled to help them process that. And so to have counselors on site dealing with really big issues like housing, parent divorce, teen suicide, it really has affected the growth of these children and interrupted kind of family system issues. Access to education, this is really the core of who we are. I put experiential learning in Classroom in the World because our kids do not learn by textbooks, not in West Dallas. Our kids want to use their hands, and so that's why we use dissections and pottery, and even math here is dominoes, dice, and hacky sacks. We use manipulatives because that's really how their brains work, and we try to travel with the kids when we possibly can. So we took our Go-Go Girls group to New York. They fundraised, they researched, they watched The Lion King on Broadway. They got to see the Statue of Liberty and write about their own freedom. It's almost like, what opportunities can we give kids that we haven't even participated in ourselves? Because that really is how we do programming around here. Our kids go on a civil rights trip every spring break. For some of our kids going to Atlanta, Georgia, it was their first time out of Texas. It was also the first time they experienced a time change as well, which was fun as well, trying to explain why we roll our clocks forward or behind. So again, getting out in the world and letting the world teach the kids is really our motto. Our biggest, most recent initiative is that we've signed on with a partnership with the Shelton School. Shelton School is located in North Dallas, top of their game in learning differences. We will begin our final training on October 9th weekend, and then the following Saturday we will open our pilot with the Shelton School on Saturdays to tutor kids with learning difference. We'll be observed. We go through all the testing and training, and hopefully in 2.5 years we're standing alone and only dependent on Shelton for testing and books. So we hope to bring this to West Dallas because it's a need that's not being met. A lot of schools they can't afford the learning difference assistance that kids need, and we're definitely seeing it in after school. We're spending a lot of time doing reading intervention, and we don't have the right tools that are actually moving the bar. So this, I do believe, will not only help our program, but affect the life of a kid. And I believe when John Hodges presented to our board from Shelton, he said that 80% of juveniles who are in the detention center, 80% of them have a learning difference. And so to know that we're interrupting the school to prison pipeline, I think that's a really, really big deal. And so that pilot happens in the next 3 weeks. My last little bit here is a video, if I can get this to play. And this is, I'm going to show you a video of 2 students, Jose and Cassandra. And this is in their own words, but you can kind of see what the things I've mentioned and how that's come together for them. So let me see if I can get this to work.
My name's Jose Oviedo. I'm 18 and I'm a senior in high school. When I first was born, my mom, she was the only one there. My dad wasn't there. And we had like 9 cousins living with us in one little small apartment. probably like 5 years old. Then they finally left on their own to different apartments and everything. So now it's just been me and my mom. Been trying so hard to like get school down, and my mom's been going from job to job just to keep this working. When I was in 8th grade, I was like youngish, rebelish. I loved attention, so I wanted to get attention. And so I did anything that I thought was really cool. Everybody started doing drugs, and I started doing drugs. There were just people I was trying to impress. I left that school in my freshman year. I didn't want nothing to do with it because that's where my past was. I made a vow to myself I would never be that person anymore. So I moved to Skyline, and that's where I started a new thing. I don't mind the driving because if I leave here at 8, I'll probably be there like at 8:20. Plus I have film class over there, so where other school would I have film class? My mom was fed up me being lazy at home every summer. I just wanted to sleep, didn't want to do anything. She found Wesley Rankin, and I felt like I was not going to make friends. I thought I was just going to be the loner of that group and probably just like sneak out whenever they don't notice. And then there was a girl there. I knew her from my old school that I used to go to, like in my middle school. That's when we started talking, and she introduced me to her. It felt like a slap on my face. Oh, I do have people care about me. Oh, I could make friends because I'm friendly. San Antonio, just for university college tours, I sat by myself because everyone had their little friend group, right? Everybody got up and sat at the same table I sat. And they're like, nah, no one's left behind. With making new friends at Wesley Rankin, making that family bond, they like basically changed my life for the better because beforehand I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted to be. Now I know who I want to be. Now I know who I am. So technically I have a new family now. I finally made a perfectly good, like, healthy family that doesn't really, like, judge you for who you are. People who will be there for you when you need them the most and doing the same thing for them. All of them in West Rankin, even the little ones are considered my families.
My name is Cassandra Luna. I'm in 6th grade.
Cassandra Luna and her two sisters, they have been coming here for years, since they were kindergarten and first graders.
I come here almost every single day. I usually do my homework, then it's usually time for dinner, and then we go to clubs.
In that block of time, we really start getting to know children and families. It's like intentional living. We really are doing life together here. And so having Cassandra and Alexandra and Felicia in the program, they begin having these behaviors that were a little bit out of the ordinary. And so when we started inquiring with the family, we found out that Cassandra's mom has lupus. Because of that disease, sometimes she goes in the hospital and sometimes she's not able to be the full mom that she wishes she could be.
I think she got like a surgery and she forgot everything that happened before, and after she couldn't remember and her hands were like shaking, and I was scared for her.
This is another story of another family doing the best with their circumstances and just needing a second home to come home to and people to love on their kids and help bridge the gap that maybe they can't for certain reasons. We asked the mom if she would be willing for these kids to go to counseling. She was 100% on board instantly. She wanted the best for her children, and she thought that they should have someone that they could talk to. Pastoral counseling services has actually helped give her the tools that she needs to self-regulate and be the young adult that she is.
It's like someone is there to walk through everything, and even if something like falls on you, they will help you stand back up.
One of the things that gives Cassandra so much life is playing an instrument.
I started playing the violin in 5th grade. The violin helped me become more calmer and less stressed about stuff.
When they choose a middle school, like any kid, sometimes you don't get to continue talents like that unless the right magnet school picks you up. St. Mary's is an incredible school for Cassandra's academics, but when it really came to her musical instrument, this thing that gives her hope and peace in life, she wasn't able to continue. But Wesley Rankin uses a connectional system. This is why it's important that we have people who are faith-based and people who are corporations and people who are just friends of Wesley Rankin, because quite frankly, we don't know what's going to walk through our doors next or what's needed. We had this donor who wanted to donate violin that hasn't been used, and they really wanted it to go to someone who would use it well. And we knew immediately which student this would be. It had to be Cassandra.
I got to meet her, and I wrote her thank you knowing why I wanted this violin.
So Cassandra not only has a violin today that is her own, Cassandra also has a teacher that comes here on Thursdays and practices violin with her. Sometimes you just look at a child and you know that there's so much promise there. That is Cassandra. You just know that she has enough grit, enough perseverance. She's responsible. She's obviously talented, determined to get through school and really make something of herself. And I would like to think that we had something to do with that maturity and getting her to where she is now.
If I didn't have Wesley Rankin, I think my life would be very sad and I would be left with no opportunities. Wesley Rankin, like, they make my family complete.
So that's pretty much who we are and what we do. Take some questions, but that's kind of an overview of what we've been doing the last few years and where we're headed.
Shelley, is the Amelia Earhart Elementary School in your area?
It is, but I don't think it's still there.
Oh, it is? Okay, because the Dallas Trinity Rotary Club used to do a lot with them.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's still there. It might have been one of the 3 that are no longer there.
Okay.
I kind of think it is, and it used to be next to DESA, and it's my understanding that Amelia Earhart and DESA are no longer, or DECA are no longer there, and they're going to use that land to build the new Pinkston.
Okay, because I think they were in Westmoreland or.
It's a little bit further down than us, but yeah, there was a huge strip of property there, and I believe they're going to build the new high school there.
Okay. Well, I think you're doing great work.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Kelly, I am sorry for getting on late. Maybe I didn't hear it, but what I like Linda said, it's amazing what you're doing. I don't know what kind of funding or support you have or what you need, but could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. You know, as a nonprofit, we always struggle with funding and volunteers. And so when it comes down to kind of our breakdown, being around so long, and we are United Methodist affiliated, a lot of our funding comes from, you know, United Methodist women, which is kind of a subgroup of the Methodist Church, writing checks. Our clientele's aging, I will say, and so that's something we're having to deal with now. A lot of grant writing for specific issue, you know, like after school, I can write all day and get funding for that. Our issues now are, like, I've had an air conditioner out since July, and I've written grants, and maybe we'll have it completed now to get an AC fixed or replaced. And so there are things like that that are harder to fund for us. Also, we're in a growth period as well. We know, like, the neighborhood changing, we can't stay the exact same and do the exact same thing that we've been doing for years. And so as we look at, like, the Shelton initiative, we need a supervisor for that. Our after school program, in the summer, we get 225 kids. That's crazy, you know, 225 kids in the summer camp. And we've been so dependent on temporary staffing of whoever we can get and who we can bring in for AmeriCorps members. My wish would be to provide part-time jobs for permanent staff, because you can see in our videos and kind of our history here, like, relationships literally change trajectories for our kids. Because Cassandra will play a violin one day and maybe get a college scholarship with that. That could literally change her decision for college or not. And so having permanent people in those situations instead of changing interns every year, I think would make a difference. So we're making it financially. Do I ask for the Chase bank account total every day? Yes. That's just what we do. We pinch pennies a lot. But my wish is that we can invest a little more in staffing. And my wish is that we had more of overhead financial stability, where really we don't. Summer camp's pretty well funded. After school comes and goes. Senior citizens, incredibly hard to fund. An aging age group. So those are kind of our struggles.
Are you open on weekends?
We are not, but the Shelton School will be Saturday mornings.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to do everything, all the children's programming Monday through Thursday. Kids tend to not have a whole lot of homework on Friday, and families usually have some kind of break of a job to where they can spend time on that weekend. And so we don't offer children's programming on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Adult and senior citizens are Monday through Friday. I will add that since our adult education piece has gone into schools, they are educating on Saturday mornings at one of the schools.
Okay. Thank you. That's very interesting. And I've been over in that area a bit. Used to have customers over there. So anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to stop by for a tour, I'm sure it looks very different on the ground than these pictures I've shown you.
Oh, yeah.
Don't hesitate to contact me to just, meet me at the front door and I can show you around.
Okay. Thank you.
It really is. I think it's one of the few, I can't quite, for the longest, I was like, what is going on with this center? Because it really is like sacred ground for people. Our volunteers come back. Our NCL, YMSL groups who volunteer, they love us. There's something that happens in this space. If we're just putting technology aside and, we're resulting to the old school way of just conversation and getting to know people who are different than us, something magical happens here. I have to say. And so if you ever want to feel the dirt, just let me know.
Okay. Well, you are making a difference. And as this year's theme for Rotary National is Be the Inspiration, and I think you are.
Thank you. Thank you. We're trying.
Howard, wake up. I got an email from Dick Strayer. Can I just give you a brief rundown of what he's doing? Of course now. Okay. He said that he's about to depart on a U.S. road trip, visiting lots of old friends and relatives. He's heading to Arizona, then northwest to Washington, on east to South Dakota, Iowa, Michigan, to Virginia to see a granddaughter. And he's going to be back in Texas in January. So that's from Dick Strayer, one of our members that's out in California. He divides his time between California and Texas. Did you hear me? Hello?
Sorry, my mic was still muted.
Did y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Rick, you came a little late. We decided we're gonna go to Lisa. We put the email out, and she was the only one who responded, and she said she wanted to do it. So I asked if there was anyone else who wanted, and they didn't get any response. So we'll think of something for the next time if we start planning now. I just thought I'd let you know because you weren't here.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else? So I wanted to thank Shelley. I did enjoy it. I was very interested in the Bonnie and Clyde part. That was very interesting. And also with the lead.
Well, isn't Bonnie and Clyde buried in Houston?
I thought they were around here, but I've never visited their graves to know.
Well, I was thinking I was in Houston when I went by one of their graves. Maybe it was here. I traveled a lot at that time, and not in the 30s and all that, but into some of my travels, I thought it was in Houston where they were buried. I'll have to research that.
Sure. I think they were one time they were in McKinney jail. I think there's somebody also from the Manson family was there. I'm not sure who, but
Wow.
Yeah.
So at least the crime has gone from West.
Okay, they are buried at Crown Hill Memorial Park in Dallas.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay. Well, does anyone have anything else we need to add to our meeting before we finish? Okay, then I will do the four-way test. The four-way test are the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And will be fun. And Rick, you have your little cup there? Oh, we missed it. We needed you. Okay, well, thanks again, Shelley. I look forward to seeing you.
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, everybody. That's it.
Good week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Shelley.